Myself, no one to walk with, but I'm happy on the shelf. Ain't misbehaving, saving my love for you and you and you and you. I know for certain the one I love. I'm through with flirting, it's you that I'm thinking of. Ain't misbehaving, saving my love for you. Jack on in the corner, going nowhere. What do I care? Your secrets are worth waiting for. I don't stay out late, got no place to go. I'm home about 8, just me and my radio. Ain't misbehaving, saving my love for you. Jack owner in the corner, going nowhere. What do I care? Your secrets are worth waiting for. I don't stay out late, got no place to go. I'm home about 8, just you and my radio. Ain't misbehaving, saving my love for you. Ain't misbehaving, saving my love for you. That's all I got. I'll let you guys get started now. Sorry, I can't hear what is being said, if anything.
Okay, great. That was awesome.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for letting me play. I really appreciate it. It's really hard to find places to actually play in front of people, even if it's just over here. So I do appreciate I appreciate the chance. So thank you very much. And I also appreciate your involvement in local politics. So thank you for doing that.
Sounded great. Thank you.
And yeah, Sam, that was awesome job. That was really awesome. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks, Kevin.
Absolutely. All right. So onto the meeting. Let's pull up the agenda here. Okay, so who on the steering committee is present? We've got Patrick Johnson, we've got Barbara McGrew, we've got Tony Reddington, we've got Jess Hyman, we've got Molly, and we've got anybody else? I think that might be it. Yeah, so we are the steering committee for Wards 2 and 3. We put this thing on once a month, and if you'd like to be part of it or have any questions about it, please feel free to reach out to any of us. All of our emails are on the agenda. And that's that item. And then our next meeting will be Thursday, March 11th. We meet on the second Thursday of every month. Well, most months. We usually take off in the summer, but yeah, it's a pretty good rule to go by. Recordings of this meeting can be found on Channel 17, aka CCTV, their YouTube channel or their website. The link to both of those are on the agenda, which is hosted on CEDO's website. And also, heads up that we are allocated the same amount of money in our budget as we did last year, which is $2,500 per ward. And we are seeking applicants for these community grants. It's a reimbursement-based grant. So check out our website. We have the or CEDO's website for the guidelines for what qualifies and apply. The deadline is looking like it's going to be by the next meeting. Or something to that effect. Basically, next month, the details will be on the website. I don't have the exact detail on me.
It's going to be, Kevin, it's going to be March 26th. So
thank you.
A month and a half for folks to come up with proposals.
Cool. So you'll have some time after next month's meeting to get those applications in.
Yeah, and I'll pop the link to the application in the chat so folks can click right on that if they want.
Cool. Is there a? I didn't think there was a chat this time around.
There is no chat tonight. You can email me at ldaugerty@burlington.gov. I'm gonna rename my CEDO NPAs as my email, so anybody who's viewing this can check that out.
Awesome. Yeah, no Zoom bombing this evening for us. I'm not sure what this item is referring to about the translation funding request. Jess, could you take it away?
Sure. So as folks remembered sorry about that. So there's been a request from all the NPAs to help support the translations, the interpretation that happened at the last, the All Wards NPA that was earlier this week. So there was a mayoral forum and a ballot discussion that was done through the all wards. And Carol Livingston and Aidan Haji had put together a team of interpreters to do live interpretation of those those discussions, and they're seeking funding from all the wards to help pay for that, because interpretation can be costly. And so wards 2 and 3 contributed money for a similar service that they provided before town meeting day, and so they've requested funding from the NPAs to help support the most recent translation efforts. And Carol, I don't think, is Carol on the call or on the Zoom tonight? I don't see her. She sent a little bit of information that I'll share, and then we can, someone can make a proposal to see whether we would like to support this with NPA funding. So they had 6 interpreters who are being paid $60 an hour for 4 hours, translating at the forum. And this was a live translation. And so the forum was the All Wards NPA forum was live streamed, and so they did simultaneous translation, and those were also recorded so people could view them later. And so this was the only election forum in this cycle that was offering translation services. So it was providing an opportunity for non-English speakers to get more information and become more engaged in the political process. So Carol is requesting some funds, and I think for the last time that we supported this, I think the request was for $200 from each ward to support this. I'll just put a proposal out that we provide $100 from each ward to help fund this really important service.
Tony?
Yeah, hi. I'm a resident of Ward 2, Tony Reddington, and hereby make a motion that Ward 2, allocate $100 for the translation purposes, and that efforts be made to promote the availability of that those translated forum to our residents here in the Ward 2.
And I'll do the same thing for Ward 3.
All right, so I'm not sure how to conduct this. Anybody more comfortable with, put on the vote? I'd hand the mic.
Tony, you live in Ward 3 now.
If there isn't any.
Tony, you live in Ward 3 now, not in Ward 2.
I'm sorry, I meant Ward 3.
Okay,
I made a mistake. I was in Ward 2. You're correct. Thank you for correcting me, Barbara.
I live in Ward 2. I will propose what Tony said from Ward 2.
Okay.
And then if it helps, we would then move to discussion if anybody needs any clarification or discussion on the items. And then those present, I guess we could vote on it, but I'm not sure how that would work with Zoom and open meeting.
Especially like
each person can raise their hand using the raise the hand function at the bottom of their screen. That's the way that I've seen some people do it.
Or you can mute them temporarily and just take a voice vote and see if there are any objections.
Anybody can unmute themselves in right now in this context.
Okay.
Raise their hand feature. Would you want to just vote on it then? Sorry, Kevin, I don't mean to.
No, please take the mic on this one.
To move the agenda item on, how about this? Are there any objections to approving $200, $100 from each ward to pay for translators? All in favor, you can either raise your hand or raise your hand on the click button thing. And then that's good. I think 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, we got most people. I see no objections. Would anybody like to object via the raise hand item? They can do that now. That would be fair. Okay. We will wait for the receipts and then file them to CEDAW for or the proper authorities to pay.
Cool.
Kevin, sorry.
No, sorry. No apologies needed. Thank you for taking care of that. All right. So we are a little bit early for public comment, but we can just get that rolling anyway, unless anyone else on the steering committee has an announcement that we want to put out there.
Karen. Say, if you don't know, it was announced this afternoon that the Britain variant of the coronavirus is probably here in Burlington. The wastewater testing shows that. They're going to confirm it, but we just all have to be doubly careful. That's all.
All right. Okay. So let's open it up for public comment. If no one objects, please raise your hands, either physically or with the Zoom function. Got 2 minutes to say whatever's on your mind, whatever you want to communicate to the group. Leah?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. I've been saying this at all the NPAs. The way that we're running the NPAs right now is to just move anybody who's not a panelist, someone that would be talking like a presenter, into the attendees list. For any Q&As, they can use the raise their hand function, and I'll unmute them. It brings them right up on the screen, and they can talk to y'all. But just in the interest of Zoom security, that's what we're doing after the speak out time. So the speak out time is everyone is able to talk, and then I just move them over to the attendees for the meeting.
Great. Cool. I mean, the chat will be missed, but it's better than the wall of Mexican hacker text or whatever that was. I forget what that they called themselves as a group. I think it was something like that. Anyway, yeah. So we are still early for public comment. I really don't want to move on from that before at least that time, just in case anyone shows up just for that part and then to leave. I think that's kind of a typical move that I've seen.
We could, if we were moving along, we could go back to it if someone specifically chimed in later. We could try to accommodate.
That's a good point. Good point.
You're the boss, though.
Jess?
I'll make a quick comment. Just I wanted to draw people's attention to the fact that Channel 17 Town Meeting TV has a great collection of candidates forums, ballot item forums, and other election-related videos on their website for viewing. And so we'll be talking about some of these things today, but to dig deeper into any of this content and to get ready for town meeting day, that's a great resource. So just wanted to put a plug in for Town Meeting TV.
Cool. Yeah, that's a good call. Thank you. And Barbara?
I just wanted to say that if you have Comcast, it is no longer Channel 17, it's 1087. And it took me a long time to find it. So 1087 is now Community Channel 17 TV on Comcast. All right.
That's a lot of channels. 1,087. Wow. What else is in that band? Wow.
I don't know, but it goes up to the 8,000s.
Oh. Wow. That's wild. I guess one more thing before we move on. We can always come back to public comment, but I really want to just reiterate for anyone who's listening in the future to this recording that the purpose of the NPA funding grants is for if you have any idea to benefit your community and it in some way could also promote the NPA, that's you would be the ideal candidate for this money. Apply for however much you need or would like, and it goes to a vote, and we decide as a group where this money goes. In the past, there's been I mean, last year was really the first year that we had this significant amount of money that could go to anything other than the dinner, and it went to just ordering and distributing masks. It went to what was the one that Trav Fryer did? If anyone remembers that one, he had some events, and he also promoted the NPA at it.
He did a repair, I think electronics repair thing.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
the dinner has traditionally gotten money to help feed, which we hopefully will do something this year outdoors in the park. Of course, we're going to play it by ear.
Right.
A good thing to remember is we don't pay an individual. We try not to pay an individual. It is for a project specifically. If somebody was going to make posters and stick them around town, great thing to do. Jeannie was doing the North End Ramble. We contributed money to help that because that actually it dovetails nicely what we do at our NPAs, promoting it. This year, she's going to actually ask for a bunch more because they're going to become their own independent organization, separate. And we will be needing a lot of, I think we're going to end up taking over our own space when we get back into it as an NPA, which means we'll be buying a sound system and so forth and so on. So things like that, if the people present want to know what they can do with the money, what it is intended for. And it is only really intended for wards 2 and 3. Mm-hmm. Activities within that help promote public participation in NPAs specifically. If I'm not correct, feel free. Anybody who knows better than I, jump in.
That sounds right. And all the guidelines Molly put up on our website, and it's on CETO's website, and it's everywhere. But I just wanted to verbally just extend it and you put it well. All right, so 6:45, public comment. Going once, going twice. Tony?
Well, we don't want to let it. We do not want to let it go by. We get our 2 minutes. I want to talk a little bit about North Street. A long time ago and far away, the Arts and Business Network of the Old North End was talking about North Street. And at the time, we were in the middle of doing a corridor plan on North Avenue, which was completed in 2014. And then the next priority is, I think most of us know, is the North and South Winooski corridor, and that study was completed. And so what I'm going to suggest is that we talk among ourselves and to our counselors about seeking a corridor plan for North Street, specifically beginning at North Avenue and certainly going over at least to North Union Street, if not a little beyond. The reason this is worthwhile, the questions back in those days were, what could we do to make the streets safer? What could we do to make it so that it would be more business friendly, that there could be more social activity? Of course, we have the Barnes School there, and we have a lot of other activities. So anyway, in a nutshell, I think that's worth doing. What we found in the Champlain Parkway environmental justice work, which is still ongoing, we found that you can we found that the safety and the walkability of a street has very much to do with the intersections, and that we can now, since we have new technology, we can make the intersections, which are now really unsafe, high crash. We have high crash locations at North and North Avenue, North and North Champlain, North and North Union, and I've missed one of them as one other one, where we have at least an injury and a half every year, and other property damage crashes. So anyway, I think that's the next thing. After the election, maybe we can get going and get a study of our shopping street, our institution street here in the Old North End. Done.
All right. Thank you, Tony. Anyone else for public comment? Barbara?
Patrick, a public announcement. The amended Burlington Town Center, or whatever they're calling it, will come before the Development Review Board on March 3rd at 5 o'clock. So if anybody's interested in going to that hearing, that's when it is.
Will there be like any opportunity for public comment there?
I know that John Franco was intending to comment, but he's, we have a case and maybe he has some special status. I'm not sure how they run their meetings, but I think so.
All right. Good to know. Thank you. Anybody else before we move on? Going once, going twice. Okay. So next up on the agenda is Janet Olson with the Waterworks, I believe.
Water Resources Division, yes.
Water Resources, yes. I was being a little bit playful, but yeah, please take it away.
I am not allowed to share my screen, which I need.
Oh, we can take care of that. Yeah, just one sec.
You should be able to share now.
Thank you. Okay, so my name is Jenna Olson, and I am the city's Water Resources Policy and Programs Manager. I'm joined tonight by Jessica Lavalette. Jessica serves as our Customer Care and Finance Manager in the Water Resources Division, or the Waterworks. We came to all of you in the fall of 2019, as you may recall. It feels like it was a lifetime ago by now, to talk about this water rate affordability study and where we were headed. We were planning on coming back to all of you in the spring of 2020, but obviously the pandemic hit and everything got kind of put on hold. So we are revamping our outreach efforts to bring our next phase of this project to everyone, presenting to the NPAs and letting everyone know sort of where we landed in terms of an actual proposal for our rates and fees and what to expect. So for a bit of context, the impetus behind this project was that, we have to steward our water resources infrastructure, right? The pipes, the pumps, the plant, all of those things require some level of stewardship, and there's a cost associated with that. And that making sure that we're providing that level of stewardship is securing access to clean water for everyone. But as the costs of that stewardship increase, that money has to come from somewhere, and that can negatively impact the affordability of our services. And so when we started this project, one of the first things we asked ourselves was, how much does it really cost to provide water service in Burlington? Who's using the water, and is everybody paying their fair share of those costs? And so our distribution system has to be sized at a certain level to provide adequate flow to all of our customers. But each customer class is unique and doesn't place the same demand on our water system. The infrastructure to provide the basic level of demand, so that innermost circle that you see on your screen, that's just normal residential and commercial water usage. Now, our pipes would be a certain size, and all of the fixed costs for the chemicals, the electricity, the pumps, all the things needed to provide that clean, safe drinking water would also be finite. But what happens when we add things like watering lawns and gardens, or peak demand from commercial users? What we can see is that our distribution system then has to be that little bit larger, so that second circle, in order to provide water for both that basic level of demand and those extra capacity flows. Now, the final circle, the biggest circle you see, represents fire protection, and that's how large our system has to be in order to provide flow for all of the private fire services in the city if needed. Now, all buildings have a dedicated water service or domestic water service to provide flow, and that pipe is typically 1 or 2 inches in diameter. However, a pipe that size wouldn't be adequate for most institutions, commercial buildings, and large multi-unit residential buildings that have fire protection needs. So they either have a separate larger service pipe to provide fire service and retain the small domestic service pipe, or they have one incoming pipe that's sized for the fire protection. And then the domestic water service is tapped off inside and reduced down to the appropriate diameter for those base level needs. Now, as we mentioned before, as the size of our pipes increase, so do those fixed costs. And going back to our original question, are all customers paying a proportional amount of the cost to provide their property with water? The answer today is no, because everyone pays the same rate, even though certain customer classes require our distribution network to be inherently larger, and they're the ones who benefit from it. So I'm going to hand things over to Jess, and she's going to go over some of the proposed or all of the proposed rate and policy changes for now. And then I will loop back at the end and just talk about our next steps and other opportunities to participate.
Hi, thank you, Jenna. So we have 6 proposed rate and policy changes that are all considered standard best practice within the water utility industry. Additionally, these changes support our goals of ensuring the affordability of water while improving the financial health, sustainability, and revenue stability of the funds. The changes are meant to help ensure customer classes are paying for services in a manner equitable to the burden they place on the system. You're going to notice some items in green here. These are changes made to our proposal since last March in an effort to mitigate the impact on commercial customers while still maintaining the affordability benefits for our residential customers. The first one here is fixed charges by meter size. We are proposing a fixed fee for both water and wastewater that escalates based on meter size, beginning with 5/8" meters up to our largest size of 6". We have always assessed a fixed charge on meter size at 1 inch or larger, but this will be the first time since 1996 that 5/8 and 3/4" meters are proposed to receive one. The 5/8" fee is currently proposed to be $3.34 for water and $4.68 for wastewater. Here is a modification from the spring where we were able to achieve a lower charge for most meter sizes by modifying the calculation basis and reducing the percentage of our cost recovery. The second item is the lifeline rate tier. Currently, we have a uniform rate structure, so where everyone is charged the same amount per 100 cubic foot, which is equivalent to 748 gallons. The introduction of a residential lifeline rate allows us to define the water needed for essential life activities as 400 cubic feet and charge less for usage under that threshold. So the current rate for water is $4.44, and we're proposing a tier 1 rate of $2.49 for consumption less than 400 cubic feet, and a tier 2 rate of $6.23 for usage over that threshold. We chose 400 cubic feet because it's the median usage in Burlington, and in calendar year 2019, 54% of Burlington customers fell into that usage category. The next one here is Jenna discussed earlier is class-based rates. The strain each customer class puts on our water system is inherently different, so it doesn't make sense to continue charging everyone the same rate. This change allows us to recognize that difference while still providing support to our residential ratepayers. We are proposing that multifamily mixed use and commercial properties be charged a rate of $4.36, which is a midway point between the residential tiers. This does provide some relief because they are typically larger consumers and would actually pay more if eligible for the lifeline rate tiers. Our previous recommendation did have mixed use and commercial customers at a higher volumetric rate, but we've decided for the upcoming fiscal year to leave them at that lower rate to mitigate any pandemic impacts. The wastewater volumetric rate is proposed to go from 620 to 608 for everyone. This rate is the same for all customer classes because volume is not a primary cost of service driver for wastewater. However, the strength of wastewater is, and that is why we can assess a monthly surcharge when an industrial user exceeds the width strength set in the city ordinances. Up next is irrigation rates. We are proposing a higher rate for water used solely for irrigation or cooling towers, but have allowed an exception for community-based gardening initiatives like BACG and the Intervale. Private fire protection charges. This change introduces a monthly fee for customers with a private hydrant or fire service that escalates based on pipe diameter. Conceptually, this goes back to our cost of service analysis, where we are paying more to have a water system capable of serving should those properties need it. As you can see in green, we have decided to phase this fee in over 5 years instead of assessing the full fee in year 1. The Water Resources Assistance Program. So this is the change that I'm personally most excited about because it has the potential to really make a difference in the lives of our customers. We are proposing to waive the fixed fee entirely for residents of single-family properties who can demonstrate that they are at or below 185% of the federal poverty level. Here we also see a modification from the spring where we've expanded the eligibility to include any senior citizens living in single family homes, along with nonprofit housing developments providing affordable or senior living units. Next slide, Jenna. So this is a quick snapshot of the customer impacts of the new rate structure. It's important to remember that future bills will vary based on a variety of factors like the actual consumption, the final approved rates, the eligibility for assistance programs. But we did create a model that uses consumption data from 2019 to calculate the estimated financial impact for every account. And to go along with that, we developed an account impact summary request form for customers to fill out if they'd like to receive that projection. This will allow us to have a discussion about why a bill might be higher or lower, but also gives customers an opportunity to learn about our available credit and review programs and the related eligibility requirements. Initiatives like applying for a RAP or a stormwater credit, along with requesting a meter sizing review or implementing conservation strategies, can all be considered and completed in advance of the proposed rate changes. We will also be including data on our post-COVID consumption trends in our responses because the pandemic has significantly altered how water is being used. We've seen an average increase in residential consumption of about 10% and a decrease on the commercial side of about 30% when compared to the previous year. Next slide, Jen, thank you. So this is an overview of the customer assistance program we're proposing. It's going to be the very first ratepayer assistance initiative for water resources. We intend to leverage existing state and federal benefit programs as our qualifying criteria in order to limit the administrative burden associated with developing our own income verification process. So this means that ratepayers who already participate in a program like Lifeline, 3 Squares, rental assistance through Section 8 can apply and just simply use their proof of enrollment to be qualified for RAP for 1 year. Or in the case of senior citizens, providing proof of their age will meet the eligibility threshold. We're open to accepting other programs, so we're hoping to get feedback from customers if they don't qualify for one of those, but they're already enrolled in something else. We can definitely take a look at that and use that as well. One of the more difficult challenges we face with implementing an assistance program is how to provide relief to renters who don't receive a water bill. Ultimately, there's no way to guarantee that a landlord would pass any savings along, and we're certainly not alone as many water utilities struggle with how to reach tenants in a meaningful way. We may not have an answer for that problem today, but we certainly aren't giving up and hope to address it with future initiatives. Speaking of future initiatives, we've begun developing some other assistance programs that address infrastructure and conservation needs. These proposals include offering grant funding for condition assessments of sewer laterals, availability of no or low interest loans for replacement of water services or sewer laterals, and along with the availability of real-time water data to monitor usage, get text message alerts if your bill is higher than you think it should be, that sort of thing, and providing free tools to implement stormwater management practices like rain barrels. These are not all going to be ready to roll out in July, but we're actively working towards them, and would welcome also ideas about other things that people think would be good for the infrastructure and conservation assistance programs. Back to John.
Great. So we did have to scale the presentation back a little bit just in consideration of time. It looks like we will have a little bit of time potentially to answer questions at the end, but just to go over the next steps. So we'll be doing our outreach between January and March of this year. That will be all of these NPA presentations. We've gone to the Board of Finance, TUC, the DPW Commission, and we have one more NPA to reach. And then we will be hosting an open house public meeting for all of our ratepayers in mid-March. So stay tuned for that announcement. We also have a really thorough website right now. So that link is at the top, and I can make sure that it goes out with any ward meeting minutes. We'll be doing our continuous improvement work between March and July. So drafting our water rate affordability program policy and making any needed ordinance changes, incorporating feedback from all of our stakeholders, and making it all the required updates to our billing system. We'll be seeking our city council and mayoral approvals of our rates and, the RAP and the rate and fee structure between April and June. And then the new rates and fee structure are set to become effective July 1 of 2021, meaning they will be reflected in residents' August bills. So again, we do have, it looks like, a few minutes for questions. We can take 1 or 2 questions maybe if the steering committee is okay with that. But otherwise, feel free to reach out and ask questions to us directly. or visit that website.
Beautiful. Yeah. Anybody have any questions? We absolutely have time. Just raise your hand either physically or with the Zoom function.
Can you stop screen sharing so we can see each other?
Sure.
Thank you.
There we go. Tony?
Quick comment on the wastewater. I talked to a lawyer who was involved today in the various efforts to control phosphorus going into the lake, and basically the cities and the state ran away from the whole issue. So Burlington, along with other municipalities, are throwing heavy loads of phosphorus, and we are basically destroying the lake. But other than that, life is fine.
It's not entirely accurate. I'd be more than happy to talk about that more in another venue, but we were actually going through our long-term control plan today to address combined sewer overflows and are in the process of finalizing our integrated water quality plan, which is an extensive cleanup plan for Lake Champlain, and it includes substantial upgrades and changes to our wastewater treatment facilities and our infrastructure. So,
I must say that that's not relevant. The point is that the state withdrew its regulatory oversight of this. So it's not what Burlington does or doesn't do. It's the fact that the statewide policy for all municipalities and for the load of phosphorus going into the lake is essentially uncontrolled.
Okay. I'd love for you to clarify that at another time, because I'm not sure what policy that you're referring to, because there are still extensive regulations. So I'm not sure. So we can talk about that elsewhere if you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely. So Tony, do you have her contact info?
I don't need it. I talked with the Conservation Law Foundation that was involved in all the court cases, and they've specifically pointed to Burlington as getting a full exemption from any requirements. Anything that's happening at the city level is pretty much self-directed, but is not connected to any overall scheme to control the amount of pollutants going into the lake. And that the state ran away from that, regardless of what the current discussion is at the city, at the Public Works.
Thanks. That's an inaccurate statement, but thank you for your feedback. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you two should connect in some way. It sounds like there's some unresolved stuff. Molly, well, that's not Molly, but yeah. Please go. Yeah.
You're good. Oh, okay. Hey, it sounds like fire protection is a huge driver in cost. And I'm assuming that a lot of commercial buildings are required to have this fire protection to meet building codes. Do you guys have any information about that? Is there some way we could make it so commercial buildings could have a fire protection system that's less impactful on our water system?
That's a good question for Jess. She may be able to.
Is there a way for it to be less impactful? I mean, I think typically a building has a pipe that's sized in order to protect it from, if there was a fire. So I think what we're trying to do is, develop a fee structure so that it is a little bit less impactful to those commercial folks. So they're not having, such a burden if they do have that fire service. Right now, we have about 500 accounts that have fire services in Burlington out of the 10,000. And we're still going over that data right now. But in terms of, if you have a fire system, we still have to be able to provide you water. So the distribution system has to be, big enough to be able to handle that sort of thing. And maybe I'm misunderstanding your question, but if you want to clarify.
And I guess the other thing I would just say is that the fire service lines are sized based on engineering calculations to provide a certain amount of demand. So the system has to be sized a certain way based on the number of residential units, number of bedrooms, things like that. So, it's certainly something that we can ask our engineering team about, but I think typically there's an engineering basis for how the fire service is sized. So, other questions?
All right. Yeah, we've got probably time for one more.
Yeah. Barbara?
All right. Barbara?
This is not apropos of the presentation, but my water is coming out cloudy half the time. And do you know anything about that? I'm assuming it's not harmful.
Typically, cloudiness in the water is air in the lines. So when you draw a glass of water and let it sit, does the cloudiness dissipate?
I don't wait. I put it back in the sink.
Yeah, I mean, you might want to try that. I'm certainly happy, offline, or if you want to contact us, get your address and see if there's been any work in the area, if there's been any main breaks or things like that that would have contributed. But typically it's air. You would want to, if you see that, just draw that glass and let it sit for a minute or two and see if it actually clears out. That would be the most common reason for cloudiness. I don't know if you've noticed any other changes in your water quality where you are, pressure issues, anything like that.
No, and I thought it was that, but this is my first winter in Burlington for a long time, and I thought it's a winter.
Sorry.
I would definitely try that, and I'm happy to, to speak with you more if that doesn't take care of it. We can go over some other, investigative things that we could put you in touch with our water quality operators as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you guys for your time. We appreciate the spot in the agenda. And again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to us directly, but we will be in touch with information on our next public comment opportunity.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I would struggle to find any other service that's more vital, than water, maybe air. So thank you for doing what you do. And it's also a breath of fresh air to not hear about rates going up for the average folk amidst COVID-19 and everything else kind of going up. It's cool that like a very vital thing is being looked after. So thank you.
Absolutely. Have a great night, everybody.
Take care.
You too. Okay. So moving on to the next thing, which is the mayoral and city council candidate forum. So who do we have here this evening? We've got Perry, we've got Kevin, we've got Will, we've got Tiki, and anyone I'm missing?
So Kevin, this is just an opportunity for those candidates who didn't participate last month to introduce themselves. So it's an opportunity for Kevin and Will, and Peg should be joining us, and Pete.
Kevin, I don't know if he's the only other person here from the mayoral race. Do you mind if I went first, Kevin?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Okay. Listen, hopefully this isn't redundant because I just found out I had 5 minutes. And so I wrote a little bit, I write all my own speeches and stuff like that. So let me do my best. All right. Citizens of Burlington, this is the most important election of your life, without a doubt. I've been around here for a long time. Vote for who you want to win. Don't let anybody convince you to vote for who you think will win or along a party line just because. I'm hereby calling a live in-person debates immediately and have notified all news stations. I'm willing to debate all the way until elections. Lack of stat reporting and true environmental respect plagues this city. Follow your money. You'll find out it's buried in the pit in the Superfund site. Many have heard about the amputees I've interviewed this past weeks, including the President Biden. I have been around since refugees and immigrants migrated here from Bosnia and Vietnam. Many reside here from both sides of conflicts within their own countries to call themselves natives to the soil that we stand on. Cubans taught me how to buy wrinkle-free shirts, for instance. Over the years, the city of Burlington, Old Burlington became much more diverse, and the need for further language interpretation rose. For that reason, I hired a world religion and culture major to babysit my son. She explained to me the struggle she was having starting comfort food business. With her drive, I have no question she'll be successful in her endeavors. Yet others have struggled with how to cooperate in a city where the recession and the pandemic is not the reason we got here. With vacant rental housing from out-of-state residents who have vanished, whereas leadership is mainly focused on rental properties, prices go through the roof for people that actually reside here, the citizens. Yet businesses that share responsibility for high quality of life have no customers left, so they shut their doors. Now the people that have desired to own properties and save what little they have to start a business to make this city thrive and flourish once again are stuck looking for overpriced rentals. That's how homelessness happens. Whereas the high school's been targeted to pay rent until the cows come home, this could all be changed through future leadership that desires to take us out of an intentional downward spiral and into a place where communities know each other regardless of faith and ethnicity. We attend the same gatherings. We trade ideas. Money's raised. Tax base shifts from the renter to the surplus of funds obtained through positive business. This is how the poor got rich. Not everybody wants that for you. In a cult-like leadership, be careful who you're voting for. You're not voting for the same candidate in a different suit. The sense of community that so many people from all over the world come to enjoy will return. Nurses, fire department, public works, police, security, doctors, teachers, professors, students, homeless, bus drivers, bus riders. The sense of pride you take in working to enjoy your leisure time will be returned to you, the rightful owners of the city. I'm sure that I'm the most qualified for that job that, aside from food and a small rent, I'm willing to work for free. I seek to strengthen bonds. If you feel like you've been wronged by the city, there's no question that I will advocate for you. Advocacy work is in my blood. For employees, businesses, patients, at-risk youth, these are strong suits that I have a long history in, and they build communities. When businesses leave, tax burden goes to the citizens. When activities slow, youth become at risk. Right now, I see homes being assessed at the worst time. It takes a village, and when vacancies disappear, communities will resurface. Crime is reduced through activity in a positive light. Whether your business is Sudanese or Ukrainian owned, we encourage that diversity in ways previous leadership pretended to. Brazilian owned, Cuban owned, we need food, health, exercise, and reliable business owners who feel they are getting a fair shake. When expenses are paid by private kickbacks as taxpayers, one way or the other, you are funding the bill. Affordable housing, local employment, eat more local organic garlic from the City Market Co-op and the good workers over there. Stay healthy. Bring rents down by soliciting currently residing Burlington residents. Champlain EDU students, UVM, will enable the people to start businesses and own homes. This is our citizen base. Think about why a beautiful Burlington High School would be targeted for transit over to a building you should own but don't. My finance reports are simple. I've paid for my own campaign, about $1,200. There will be plenty of community building events to support community growth. Music and arts, the population is extremely diverse. I intend for leadership to finally reflect that value. Appointed leadership. Burlington has become exclusionary rather than inclusionary. From the lake to the closing of the Memorial Auditorium to destruction of everything we value, I intend to clean it up. The education system will flourish for me as I have extensive paperwork on how to assess those children in need, as it's as simple as asking for help. Taking a good look into the mirror, remember this is your city. Take it back and vote. In person, wear a mask. Will Emmons on a path to ownership and actual proven leadership through extreme education, working with colleges, hospitals, municipal workers, people that have gone neglected and shipped to the next town over. Those are the homeless Puerto Rican and Native American Greek gentlemen, the amputees that I interviewed. This is what I specialize in. I know that I hear a lot about education, yet we consult everything out. Need for having an educated mayor, which I am extremely educated, but we consult all of these things out. We need a leader that knows how to communicate in ways we have been failed in recent years. I will bring that to the citizens I care for so dearly. And I'm at IG Twitter. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Will. And let's stick with the.
I cut it close.
Oh, that was yeah. That was right on the money.
That was my best one yet.
Well, shoot. Thank you for your your activity, all your contributions.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. I have definitely been involved around here, and please note, guys, I'm definitely calling for debates in person. I've notified every news station. So, Thank you.
Things are a bit crazy right now.
Yeah, well, I was just in person with a bunch of customers next door. So, well, I hear you, man. I hear you. Yeah, thank you, guys.
Yeah. You got it. You got this time. So let's stick with the mayoral race. We've got Kevin and we've got Patrick here. Looks like so. I'll flip a coin. Say Kevin. I'm gonna be a little name favorite.
Okay. Yeah. I grew up with a last name starting with W. I'm used to being at the end of the list.
Hi. My name is Kevin McGrath, and I'm a longtime resident of the 3rd Ward, and I'm running for mayor. And the focus of my candidacy is going to be governmental reform and social justice reform in Burlington, and how it relates to achieving a better life for all the citizens. So I'll read you my brief mission statement and some of my platform. The purpose of my candidacy is to work for the establishment of governmental systems of equal protection, respect, and merit, in an attempt to ensure that these citizens work for all citizens and residents of Burlington, Vermont. And I think that's important because, in my opinion, the state of Vermont and the city of Burlington does not equally protect all citizens of different classes and different ethnicities. My goal as mayor is to create continuous improvement systems of merit, direct democracy, and critical thinking that actually solve problems. Create an atmosphere of racial justice that works for the good of the entire community. Work to create livable neighborhoods and end the unaffordability by design policies in the city. For social and criminal justice reform proposals, I'm proposing a statewide legislative ban on the use of out-of-state and for-profit prisons to house inmates from Vermont. The demilitarization and de-escalation of tensions between law enforcement and the residents in the city of Burlington. Changing the concept of law enforcement more to a public safety force to ensure the respect of all residents. Work for a grandfathered residency requirement for law enforcement so that they live in the communities that they serve. That's a big problem. For governmental proposals, reform proposals, I'd like to propose a Burlington city charter change to a full-time city council. And I think this is very important. I think we need a full-time city council, paid full-time city council that has half as many people as now, 7 people, that works with the government, with the mayor. And the mayor actually sits on the council and decides ties. We really need to look at reforming the planning process in the city and the community and economic development processes. These processes are currently controlled by special interest. Address the issues and special interests that corrupt government processes. Government, less ad hoc government, more direct democracy, and less adjunct government. That's why I'm proposing an actual full-time paid city council that can work with the NPAs and things like that. Work for social justice and the rights of dignities who rely on earned income from the negative effects of excessive wealth concentration, which I think is a major issue in Burlington. Basically, people who value work and work for a living their lives are being strip mined by people who are just interested in concentrating wealth. I'd like to see some education reform in Vermont. I'd like to see a statewide state university, Vermont State University, that works closely with high school students and gives Vermont better skills and opportunities to create a stronger Vermont. The University of Vermont is not providing the skills. It's essentially a private college. Use the monies from Vermont state government that go to the University of Vermont and redirect those to a Vermont State University. Vermont also needs property tax reform. The present plan has been a complex disaster that greatly favors wealth over earned income. And that's a theme in my candidacy, is that Vermont, and especially Burlington, favors people of wealth over people who do work. Act 60 needs to be better in Vermont, not just more expensive. The problems of Act 60 we're supposed to address, they still exist. Act 60 is too complex and too convoluted. It's more about the concentration of power by special interest groups than it is about education. We really need to come up with simpler solutions, more direct democracy. Convolution breeds corruption, in my opinion. As far as a charter change, okay, thank you.
Yep. All right.
Excuse me, point of information. Kevin, I just want to say one thing. My email address is willemmons@gmail.com. Could you hit me on an email so I have your contact information?
Sure thing.
Yes, I will.
willemmonsformayor@gmail.com. Thank you, Kevin. And great.
Yeah, and I have to say that I agree with a lot of things that Will said tonight.
Thank you, Kev. I think we're on the same page about a lot. I look forward to speaking to you in the future.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. And Patrick White, please, in 5 minutes, talk about whatever you like.
I probably won't take the full 5. I tend not to be too wordy, but I did write something up. Thanks, Will. Thanks, Kevin. It's kind of funny that the three people with the most common sense are the only ones here tonight. I like that, honestly. My reason for being here is because I see Burlington headed towards a downward spiral. Our current administration lacks any sort of transparency and accountability. Our mayor is so against abolishing the police, but can't stand with our officers to veto the proposals that actively destroy the police force. Now he argues with Max back and forth, blaming him for the bill that he allowed to pass. Max, on his website, promises to aid the elderly and children in the community, but doesn't promise them protection. Burlington in the last year has been in the news for a sex trafficking ring, a police chief who hides behind fake social media to harass citizens with the approval of the mayor, and now an active shooter situation. And even after all of this, our city leadership refuses to consider that dismantling our police force is reckless. These are the two frontrunners of our mayoral race right now. One who has a shady history of obfuscating financial issues, covering for wrongdoing, and a primary focus on fixing things that aren't broken. And another who keeps running on a platform of complete hypocrisy with the intention to put in place well-meaning policy that will inevitably only work to increase the cost of living and barriers to housing. Ollie, on the other hand, I agree with on many things. I respect a lot of his views, but we disagree on one key thing. That major thing is moving the F-35s from Burlington. Not only could this hurt the economy, but the chance that the Air Force packs their bags and takes their emergency services and airport funding with them is one I just don't want to take, because that could mean losing the airport. These are the issues we should be debating. We shouldn't be sitting here humoring the arguments for and against the problems that the very people in this race helped to create. The first step in problem solving is identifying the causes. Why aren't we discussing how the gentrification of City Hall Park was made a priority over fixing our roads? Why are we hardly discussing all the businesses and residents that haven't found a home in the pit because our mayor, whose background is in development, failed to see the project through while still adamantly refusing to admit that we're losing revenue because of it? To top it all off, literally millions of gallons of raw sewage a year are dumped into our lake. A decade and yet no solution, just grand promises of funding received. Violent crime and policing issues are receiving national attention right now, and the city blames our police force, then ensures more problems down the road by crippling their funding instead of providing them with more resources. When it comes down to it, the reason I'm here is because I want to see Burlington succeed, and I want to see Burlingtonians succeed. But honestly, the longer I run and the more people I talk to, I see a lot of people that don't seem to want to see positive change. They just want nice promises of possibly good things in the future. Thank you for having me, and I cut this a little short so that I have some time if anybody has any questions.
All right. Hey, does anyone have any questions for Patrick?
I wanted to say one thing, Patrick, and the citizens here. I've mentioned this on several debates. Fake Instagram account started in my name almost immediately when I gave the mayor's office my email address, which is willemmonsformayor@gmail.com. An Instagram page was started, Will Emmons.
I'm not surprised. I reached out to them once I found out some of my information was on some paperwork, and they won't get rid of it. So some of my information has just been released out there. I'm really not surprised.
Yeah, I've been hacked a lot under this. Believe me, guys, it's very, very, very real and very happening in Burlington.
I can believe it. It's the internet. It's the way it goes. Peggy, I saw your hand up.
Not the way it goes, but the way it's going.
I would like to say something about the F-35s, which I have opposed for a long time. And there's no reason to think that we would lose the Guard base because we lose the F-35s. There's not that. There is a mission for the Guard that is separate. We know that the Air Force itself in its environmental plan decided this wasn't the best place for it, but Patrick Leahy was insistent that it be here. And of course, all the guys stick together as a congressional group when they do that. And I found it horrendous that Bernie, who'd always made affordable housing his issue, was willing to let go all that housing. So
is there a question for Patrick?
I actually wasn't aware of Leahy's influence in that. So thank you for that.
All right. So his time is actually up. So unfortunately, Kevin, you two should just connect at a later time.
Oh, I just wanted to say something about what Peggy said about the 35s. Okay.
I think that would be more appropriate for another time.
Okay, fine. Yeah, that's all right.
We got a full agenda. Unfortunately, I really don't want to get too lost in that. We've spent a ton of time talking about the F-35 at this NPA. If you've had any experience, it's a well-worn topic.
Yeah, I understand. That was a done deal from the beginning. So anybody who thought that wasn't going in is naive. I'm just saying that.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So moving on to the city councilors that are vying for the central district, I believe. We've got Peggy, and we've got Perry is here, and
tonight we're just making time for Peggy to introduce herself.
Just Peggy. Okay. Cool. I was just listing off everyone here, but looks like cool. Well, Tiki is here as well. So is Tiki not? I thought.
I did speak last time, so this is not my night. This is for Peggy.
Peggy was a late entry, and we're just allowing people who did not have the opportunity last time.
10-4. Sorry, I missed the memo. Peggy, please, 5 minutes.
Okay, I'm Peggy Lures. I've lived here since 1977 in the Old North End. I am running to represent my neighbors and not a party. I would have to say my two main concerns are that the city be more aware of the future and plan for that we not be doing the same old stuff of gentrification and the kind of plans that everyone thought was the way to go and increase the tax base, because we are going to be facing some tremendous climate changes and economic downfalls and a lot of things. And I'm very concerned for Ward 3 because this is one of the poorer wards in the city. And I worked in the city for 10 years. I was the head of the Burlington Women's Council. And at the time that I worked for the city, when I started, Bernie was the mayor, and then it was Clavel, and there was a Republican mayor in there. And there was a lot more concern and help afforded to this ward, knowing that it was a ward that could, use some assistance and relief for rents and so on. So I'm very concerned that we take steps, particularly in the built environment. We're not being very forward or thinking or progressive on this level at all. For example, the city of Chicago demands that all large buildings have green roofs. We don't do anything like that. I would like to see a lot more emphasis on that. And I would like to see, I'm not thoroughly familiar with it, but I do understand that Max had some ideas about changing the tax base so that it would be a more progressive tax base. It's I love that the water system is looking at it that way and talking about, decreasing some of the rates for some people over here who have less money. I wish we'd do that with tickets too, because I feel like a fine of $75 for some single mom on welfare means less food. Whereas, it makes very little difference to somebody who makes over $100,000 a year or something. It's not. So I don't think that's a fair system. what else did I want to talk about? I want to do just practical things that I have seen done, just helping the neighborhood out. Like I think this was done during Clavel's time of just bringing a great big dumpster to the neighborhood and telling people that they can come and take care of things, because it's a big deal and an expense getting rid of things in this town. I worked for 10 years in City Hall. During that time, I helped, we got passed an ordinance to bring women into the trades because at that time we had looked at we had a jobs and people study that looked at who were the poorest people in the city, and the top on that list was single moms. So we were looking for ways to bring women out of poverty, and the trades were one of them, and I happen to have a background as a carpenter. I also have graduate studies in ecological design, which I would bring to the table. I have 10 years experience running the Women's Council in City Hall, and we did a lot of things. We did help to get Step Up off the ground, and we worked a lot with the CEDO office. We got housing built for single moms who are, not built. I'm sorry. We got a place where single moms could have a 2 years of, to get on their feet. We had regular forums. We ran a diversity film series to educate the community about the different kinds of people who are here. And we always had people from those communities introducing the films and being part of it. What else can I say about what I want to do? I care a lot both about the equity issues and income, also racial justice. I did work with the police during that time. And one of the things that I thought we managed to do that was pretty amazing was we managed to get a person into the police department who looked over how the police dealt with domestic violence. And that could be a model for, having somebody check, having somebody specifically designed to look at the racial problems that we have had with the police. But my main thing around the police would be demilitarize the police. For example, when I did work in the city, it was like we were doing what we were doing in Burlington. We were also having we also worked with the people who got the training changed at the police academy, because I think we have to demilitarize the police. They have to have a different approach to how they're doing it. And I also think we could diversify the budget so that some of it went to social workers or other people more equipped to handle people having mental illness and other breakdowns like that, and that don't need somebody to show up with guns.
Thank you, Peggy.
Okay.
Yeah, looking forward to voting day. Thank you for presenting, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you. Absolutely. Let's for some reason there we go. All right, so moving on, we've got Brian Pine here to talk about the ballot items that are going to be on the ballot. That's either going to show up in your mailbox or when you go to your voting place. He's our city councilor, and he's here to answer your questions and to give a brief overview. Brian, take it away.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks everyone for being here. I am the only Ward 2-3 elected official that's not on the ballot. I was re-elected last March, and so I was vested with the the task of going through the questions that are on the ballot. I won't dwell on any of them, but I'm prepared to talk about any one of them or several if needed. So there is a tax question, number one, regarding the schools. I'll talk about each of these in more detail, but I'm just going to list them right now. There are 4 charter changes. There is 1 question to opt in for retail cannabis sales, and there's 1 advisory question sort of about energy justice, I guess is how I would describe it. The school tax increase is one that is spelled out in the language that's on the ballot is what is required by the Vermont Agency of Education. So that is worded in a way that I find very opaque or obtuse. It's really quite hard to understand what's actually happening when you read this question, because it does say that the equalized per pupil spending will increase by X percentage, which is 0.89%. However, the tax increase for most taxpayers is actually 6%. That's because a full 5.1% of the increase is due to the fact that our city has not reappraised properties since 2004, 2005. And that puts us out of compliance with a thing called the common level of appraisal. And I won't get into explaining all that detail, but let's just suffice to say that we're paying a penalty through the taxation for not keeping up with reappraisal. Once you fall below a certain level, it starts to hit pretty hard. And that's what we're paying for in that tax increase. So that's part of what's happening with our request, the request on the ballot, question number 1 regarding the school tax. The next 4 questions are charter changes. And for those who aren't familiar, their charter is really like a municipal constitution, whereas the Code of Ordinances is those are your laws. And basically in Vermont, because we are what's called a Dillon rule state, and that's just a term that means that you have virtually no home rule, you have no local control, except for those issues that the state legislature has already given you authority for. So you can only adopt things that the state legislature has given you approval, and therefore we need to go to get their approval and essentially establish new state law for each one of these provisions I'm about to discuss. So there's 4 charter changes. Without going to the voters and then to the legislature, the city council cannot take action on these items. The first one shows up on the ballot as question number 2. It essentially adds a position on the airport commission from Winooski, which has sought a seat for quite some time. And it has to add another Burlington representative so that there's an odd number of commissioners rather than the even number to avoid perpetual tie votes that stymie the ability of that board to do its work. I would just note that the airport commission, like all city commissions, serves in an advisory capacity. The director of the airport is a mayoral appointee, but that they review policies, procedures, they do review their budget, they provide feedback on the performance of the general manager at the airport, but they are advisory. And that's the changed question number 2 regarding the airport. Question 3 is a question that is regarding regulation of thermal energy systems, which I presented this information last night to a group of constituents, and someone said, could you explain what is meant by thermal energy? And I guess the best way to describe it is it's heating and cooling. And so it is the energy that is used to do space heating, to do water heating, and to cool buildings. That's really what thermal energy systems are. And essentially what happens in this question is it asks the voters, shall the city have the authority to regulate thermal energy systems in both residential and commercial buildings? And then it says to essentially through the amendment of a certain section of our code, and it goes into exactly what this would include, which is assessing a carbon impact or alternative compliance payment for the purpose of reducing greenhouse gas emissions throughout the city. And then it goes on to say, and this is an important piece that I think has been lost in the debate. You'll see an article, I think, in 7 Days Today, in the print issue. No assessment of carbon impact or alternative compliance payments shall be imposed unless previously authorized by a majority of the legal voters of said city voting on the question at any annual or special city meeting duly warned for the purpose. So in other words, plain English, there isn't going to be any fee or tax or anything like that imposed until it is debated and brought to the voters again for a vote. So this is simply, shall we have the authority to regulate thermal energy systems in residential and commercial buildings? The main impetus for this is to move us toward our 2030 net zero goal, which we are quickly running out of time. And that's literal on the planet, but also in terms of taking our buildings and finding essentially the political will to require that all new buildings essentially move off of fossil fuels. No more new fossil fuel connections would be allowed under what the city council and the administration would like to see, that all new buildings be essentially electrified. And there's a lot of good reasons for that, which hopefully you're familiar with, but if not, we can talk more about that. Question number 4. Am I doing this in the right order? Yes, that was number 3. Number 4, this is ranked choice voting. So it essentially, just for city council, would go into effect in March of 22. And a quick synopsis of ranked choice voting is it's a voting system where when there is, well, first of all, if there's only 2 candidates running for a seat, ranked choice voting doesn't come into effect. And if there's more than 2 and any one candidate comes out of the election with 50% plus 1, ranked choice voting doesn't kick in. It kicks in when there's more than 2 candidates and no one reaches the 50% threshold. You then start going through and retabulating results. And if I could do it simply, I'll just say, if there are 3 candidates seeking a city council seat, like there are in this race today in Ward Central District, and I'm not going to use names because that just may try and bias people, but I'll just say candidate A and candidate B are the top 2 vote getters. Candidate C is the lowest vote getter. Candidate A and B stay in the race. Now, this is when you have a runoff. No one has gotten the 50%. Candidate A and B stay in the race. Candidate C is knocked out of the race, but the ballots that the voters for candidate C chose candidate C as their first choice, their second choice votes get counted, retabulated, and that determines the winner. So that's sort of a quick and dirty description of how instant runoff or ranked choice voting. They're really the same thing. We used to use the term instant runoff voting. The purpose of this is to require that anyone who wins an election have majority support. What a concept. So rather than allow someone with 40% of the vote plus 1 vote to essentially win, when in fact, nearly 59 out of every 100 voters preferred someone else, this requires that the person clear the 50% threshold. That's the purpose of ranked choice voting. Only for city council in 2022. I believe if it's adopted and goes through the legislature, there will be a proposal coming out soon for the next mayoral race, which would be 2024, to also have ranked choice voting. But that's down the road. Question number 5 is one that I've spent a good amount of time on myself as a counselor, is just cause eviction. Proposed charter change to provide protections for residential tenants from evictions without just cause. I would say in summary, there are a few just causes. I would include and give you what those are: non-payment of rent, breach of lease, breaking state or municipal law, refusing to sign a new lease with reasonable changes, disturbing the peace of others in the building or neighbors. There's a number of things that qualify as just cause. What are not going to be just cause examples would be, I just don't like the person. I don't agree with them. I don't think their beliefs are beliefs that I'm comfortable with. Those are not reasons to evict. You need to have an actual just cause in order to proceed with an eviction. And you can't just tell someone your lease is up, you need to move. So that's a key part of just cause that folks need to understand and think about. Is it essentially says, once you're in an apartment, as long as you follow the rules, pay the rent, and don't disturb the peace, you're going to have a level of protection that is currently only afforded to people who own property. And that's a big shift. I know some folks think that's perhaps a bridge too far. And that's an area where we might, part company, but at least from my perspective, it's a level of protection that I think is warranted because it does provide residential stability. The benefits of that accrue to both the household living there and to our community when people have the stability of being able to set down roots, keep their kids in the same schools, or go to the same clubs or religious organizations, or go to the same parks that they've been accustomed to. There's a lot of benefits to this. And I won't pretend to be impartial, but I would say we did add some exemptions to sort of make this a more flexible, more accommodating for property owners, really. If you have a multi-unit building of 3 units or less, and you live in the building, you would not be subject to this provision. If you have in-unit rentals, in other words, you have a house and you have people living in the house with you, you're not subject to this provision as well. And if you're taking a unit off the market, or moving a family member in, or a unit needing substantial rehabilitation, would not be covered by Just Cause under the proposal. This will go to the voters, and then, of course, going to the legislature. That's a whole different story. The Vermont legislature is not known for approving any proposals that extend more rights to renters. Very, very friendly to rental property owners. It was once proven that over 60-something% of legislators, in fact, own rental property. And so it has a very uncertain future once it reaches the legislature, but a very strong showing from the voters of Burlington will improve the outcomes. The next 2 questions, one is very unusual. I don't know what to call it. It's neither an advisory question nor a charter change, but the legislature passed a cannabis law. And one of the things they said in that is local government needs to ask their voters whether they would like to participate or opt in to this retail cannabis sales. And so that's question number 6. If you think Burlington should get into allow for businesses to open selling cannabis and cannabis products, that's that question. Question 7, the last question on the ballot, is an advisory question regarding climate justice in building decarbonization. And what it says is, and I'll read it and then I'll try and give a Cliff Notes version. Shall the voters of the city of Burlington advise the city council and the mayor's administration in its regulation of thermal energy systems in residential and commercial buildings to create policies, programs, and incentives focused on delivering the benefits, the transition to clean energy to low and moderate income Burlingtonians, to Black, Indigenous, people of color, and to otherwise disadvantaged community members. So the idea there is let's transition, but let's do it in a just way. It's sort of the concept of just transition. Let's make sure that as we make this transition, we're not leaving people behind or imposing undue financial burden on them. Let's do this in a way that really lifts up and elevates the needs and voices of those who are so often marginalized. So I think I've run through the 7 questions, and Kevin, you can take it from there, I guess, or open it up.
Right on. That was awesome. Anybody have any questions for Brian? Patrick?
Brian, do you know of any examples where IRV is currently working and in place, as well as the just cause eviction?
Sure. Thanks, Patrick.
Just a little bit of background. So these aren't completely new ideas proposed in Burlington.
Yes, absolutely. I'm really glad I listened to this radio program today, actually. It was about an hour long, and it was a debate between Paul Burns from Vermont Public Interest Research Group, also known as VPIRG, and Kurt Wright, and they were debating the merits of ranked choice voting. And on came an advocate for ranked choice voting from Maine, who described that Maine is now using it for all statewide races for which they're allowed to use it. And he actually said that when you add up all the municipalities that are using ranked choice voting, it's over 9 million citizens are currently living in places that ranked choice voting is the way elections are held. So places that come to mind are Cambridge, Massachusetts. I know that Cambridge has it for all local elections. Maine, there's a ranked choice system in effect in New York City, but I have to admit, I think it's quite nuanced and it has a bit of an unusual wrinkle to it. It may be just in the primaries. I don't know why that would be, but it may be something that is done in primaries. I'm not sure the New York one, but I do know that it's in effect and has been successful and is quite popular in a number of places where it's been used. The local history, I think, is people often who felt like the mistakes that an administration which was successful in winning an election in IRV back in 2009. I think there's a conflation of what they thought was wrong with that administration and the voting system that was used that allowed that person succeeded in. I think it's correlation, but not causation. And unfortunately, too many people make that link that I don't think should be made. I think that's a problem. Just Cause, though, is a policy in effect in New Hampshire, the province of Quebec, Washington, D.C., the entire state of Oregon, California, a whole slew of individual municipalities. I would add, we used to say all of Northwestern Europe has this as national housing policy. I think it's all of Europe now. So it's a policy that's been in effect and been practiced elsewhere. We have a long ways to go to figure out how it will actually be implemented, but we've laid out the framework in the charter change that I think gives people an idea of where this is heading.
Just one quick, so the charter change as proposed will come back to us. The city council will fix all those nuances to make it work for landlords and renters in Burlington. So the final product will be unique to us, which will be in the next couple of years if it is approved by the legislature.
I would say so, Patrick. That's an important point is what's on the ballot is the floor. You can't take any of that stuff away. You can only add things to it. So what we put on the ballot, once it goes to the legislature, I should clarify, legislature can take what we have passed as a community and totally change it. It becomes their bill, which is really strange, but it becomes state law. And so the legislature could look at our proposal or what if the voters approve it, even if it's 70% approval, and say, we don't like this, this, and this, we're going to change that. And then they send it back to us. That's the way this works.
That's a really important point. I'm glad that came up.
Yeah. That's true for all of our charter changes, by the way. Yeah. And they turned us down. The voters overwhelmingly approved gun control several years ago. And the legislature said, we're not having it. You're not doing any of that. And back in the 80s, speculation was rampant where people would buy rental properties and basically put a new coat of paint on them and maybe some shutters and some carpeting and flip them. This flipping was happening so rapidly. Property values were driving up. And so we passed an anti-speculation tax to stop that. And the legislature said, no, the voters of Burlington, you don't know what's best for Burlington. We're going to tell you can't do that. So they stopped us from doing it.
Polished turds became the norm.
Yes.
Oh man, that's good history. That's not something that you read about often. Anyway, any other questions from the crowd? Raise your hand either physically or with the Zoom. I hope we got one hand raised in the attendees. Alyssa Faber.
Yeah, I think maybe it goes along with that. I'm wondering why ranked choice voting is just for the city councilors and we didn't add in the mayor candidates, but maybe that's part of the floor you're talking about, Brian, to get it passed.
Actually, Alyssa, that's a point that I should have added. That was a political compromise. This process of getting things on the ballot requires sometimes you have to get to 7 votes to get on the ballot. And then if you want to prevent a mayoral veto, you need 8 votes. So we really needed extra votes. So we did take the mayor out of the mix in order to get enough votes to put it on the ballot. That's just one.
Hey, it's progress, right?
Yeah. Hey, exactly. Sometimes you have to crawl before you can walk and run, and but it's a really important point. It really should be for the mayor's race as well.
Any other questions? I know I have one, but I don't want to jump in ahead of anybody. So in the meantime, Brian, I'm wondering about the, I haven't really read into the thermal energy regulation question. And I did a quick Googling and I couldn't quite tell what it meant by the city would decide. Is that the city council and the mayor together deciding on those matters, like to regulate, private and, commercial buildings? Like what body within the city would be deciding this? what's the process? What's the
Yeah. And you're referring, I believe, to the actual charter change, not the advisory question.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So the wording is it would permit the city council to regulate thermal energy systems. So it would give the city council the authority to regulate the systems in our ordinances. But if we were going to impose any kind of financial penalty, if you will, or you can call it financial incentive. No, I would say penalty. Assessing a carbon impact or alternative compliance payment, which is basically a way of saying, if you're going to stick with fossil fuels and our policy is we want everyone off of fossil fuels, but you're going to stick with them, we're going to charge you a fee to help fund the conversion of other buildings to non-fossil fuel sources, because we feel that's so important to do. But that would have to come back to voter approval. So that we cannot move forward on a fee, any kind of fee structure, often called a carbon tax. That's a simple term for it. I don't think that's the best way to describe it, but that's how people often refer to it, would have to be brought back to the voters. That would not be able to be approved by the council.
Gotcha. Cool. So it's city council, not just city. That makes a lot of sense.
Yep, it is.
Cool. It's not just like, I was wondering, just with, the word city, like, is that like just the mayor making a call? Is that like, the council? That makes a lot of sense. So thank you. Cool.
You may notice, people, if you haven't seen anything, but there's a group of folks associated with the Republican Party and the fuel dealers of Vermont who are sending out information. We got them as text. Somehow they got our cell phones and they sent us texts about this, but it's complete obfuscation and misinformation going out. It's bad.
Yikes. Any other questions from the crowd for Brian? Going once, going twice. Oh, we got one. We got Jake.
Hello.
Hello.
So if the one about regulating thermal energy was passed, would that make it easier for the city to develop a district heating system as well as electrification? And how, sorry, I hope you can hear me. And how would that work if it was like implemented? Would individual like units be required to hook up to the district heating system, or would it just be for like large consumers of thermal energy? Do you have any input on that?
Jake, that's a great question. Nobody has asked that question. You're causing me to think quickly here on my feet, and I'm not even on my feet. But I believe that the relationship between the district energy and this question is a correlation question. There's not a whole lot actually connected here, but it's an interesting question because the district energy system takes waste heat out of McNeil and it pipes the steam up to the institutions. That's what's happening under the plan that's going forward. And actually, I should just mention, it is moving to its next stage in implementation, which is phenomenal. And yet it doesn't go to any other, it doesn't go into neighborhoods. So it's not a source to heat your building yet. But if it became available, that would be a way to move people off of the existing. I believe it would. I don't know. I have to ask some of the other experts. It still is, it's trees, but so is it a fossil fuel, Jake? No, it's not a fossil fuel. So yeah, I guess that theoretically that would be a way to help property owners wean them off of fossil fuels, is through a district energy hookup to a building, which is cost effective only when you have a big enough building to do it to, because it's a very capital intensive cost to install a pipe and then have that pipe go into your building when you currently just have natural gas lines going into your buildings. But I think there's things we don't even think about today that will be coming down the pike, hopefully before too long.
Good deal. That's something on the horizon possibly.
Yeah.
Good deal. Yeah, that's something that I've been hearing, hearing about for quite a long time. And it's cool. It's good to hear that that there's some progress being made on it.
Yeah, the update, hopefully we'll get a chance to touch on what that update is, but there's some great news on that.
Sweet. All right. Anybody else before we move on? Oh, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Sherry, Molly's mother-in-law. Just on the question about the fair rental stuff, there's just one word in there that I'm wondering about, and that is on the part that mentions reasonable changes on a lease. I think that's a really subjective word, and I wonder how that would be dealt with if a tenant and a landlord disagreed on what was reasonable change in a lease. And I am a landlord. I am totally behind everything else in this. It actually wouldn't affect me because I have a homeowner occupied unit, but I just wondered about sort of the subjectiveness of that word and how that would work if there were a disagreement about that.
Sherry, that's another tough question. I have Jess Hyman on this. I see her on this meeting, so I'm going to see if we have not spent much time getting into the detail of how to define that. And that will be part of the process of creating the local ordinance, will be having folks participate. We won't be doing Zoom anymore by then, hopefully, and get real about what it is that we should do to provide that balance, that sort of delicate balance for the owner of the property and the person who relies on it for the place to live. So that's I'd say it's kind of a weak answer, but it's like commitment to charting a path that gives us that balance. And Jess, what do you think about that?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. My thoughts on it are, since the ordinance, when it gets approved by the legislature and comes back to Burlington, when we're developing the ordinance, we have the opportunity to define what that means. And one thing that could happen was maybe the Housing Board of Review could mediate some of those discussions, or in some cases there might be a role for legal aid. But I think there are really good examples from other cities of how they've set up structures to help make sure that those types of potential conflicts can be mediated with a focus on reconciliation and a focus on making sure that that both parties can get their needs met in the fairest way possible, because the goal is to increase housing stability, and especially to increase housing stability for people who are traditionally subjected to housing discrimination and who have a tougher time in the housing market in general. And so I think that those types of things would be worked out once it came back to Burlington, and there's a really good opportunity for a lot of public input and engagement in how reasonable gets defined.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Jess. Thank you, Brian. Any other questions? We have 10 more minutes on this spot on the agenda, but if no one's got a question, I think we can move on. I think that's it. Thank you, Brian. That was a really good run through. That's perfect.
Thanks a lot. That's a lot to handle for one individual.
Yeah. I knew you'd be up to it. So thank you. Thank you for nailing it. What is next? I think it's, if my memory serves, it's the school board. Yes. So Jean Waltz is here and Steve is here. Steven. All right. Cool. Take it away.
Want me to start, Jeannie? Okay. Okay, well, I just
stop you actually, Stephen. So yes,
I have information that I will share, and I'm still on a learning curve about the budget, and Jeannie's really good at detail. And yes, this is a black and blue under my eye. It's a ski pole accident, not anything nefarious, But anyway, You know, there's a document that I was looking for today on the website. We call it the one pager on the budget development. And I was under the impression it was going to be made available today to the general public. I looked for it, I couldn't find it, but it's something that you should definitely look for. It's basically 2 sides of 1 page, and it gives a lot of more detailed information that I'll go over tonight. But definitely look at that. The other thing, go ahead.
Stephen, I did include it. Jess does have it.
Oh, okay.
It was embedded in the agenda. It will be put in the minutes. Are you wanting just to share the screen and pull it up? Would that be helpful?
I don't think you have to. It's just a reference in case you want to look more carefully at it. Has everyone on the screen now seen it? Have people seen? The general public hasn't seen it yet, I don't think, right?
Well, I did send it along, and it was included in.
There was a link in the agenda included a link.
Okay.
And I can screen share it if you'd like.
Well, you can if you would. I don't think it's necessary right now, but I was looking on the BSD site for it to see if it was out available. I was looking on Front Porch Forum because I think we talked on Tuesday night about it being made available in those 2 places, and it isn't there yet, I don't think. But anyway, you know, and the other thing is the
NPA, the sneak peek.
Pardon me?
We're giving our NPA the sneak peek of this.
Yes, definitely. And the other thing we give you a sneak peek of is the 2020 annual report, which I don't think you've seen either, right? But Jeannie may have made that available. And it's really a very interesting document that you need to read through it. It's very informative. It talks about the annual report does. It talks about the leadership transition, the coronavirus impact, capital improvements that we've made. You know, this has been such a crazy year that it's, you know, I forgot all of the things that we've been accomplishing this year in terms of capital improvements. I'm just going to, if I have time, I'll talk a little bit about that later. But it gives demographic data and budget information in detail. There's a nice narrative in the annual report about the process of the budget development this year, which is very informative. And, you know, I was looking at that today because even though I was part of it, it's hard to remember all the permutations that we've undergone regarding budget development. It also gives, as you know, if you've seen before, annual reports, student and staff highlights, among other things. But basically, you know, the fiscal year 2021 budget, that was last year's budget, was 91.5 million. This year's budget, the upcoming budget for 2022 is 95.1. So it's a $3.6 million difference, which represents 3.9%. And I think people need to understand that a lot of that money is committed already. So we don't have a lot of money to work with. Basically, we're committed in terms of health insurance, wages, debt service on money that we borrowed for different projects, and then a very minimal strategic investments. And then we were hit with this increase due to downtown BHS, which was 2.4 million, and the Burlington Technical College relocation, which was 460,000. So those were unpredicted, you know, bills that we were hit with this year. So the original total was 97.2 million, which is a 2.1 million difference between what the budget actually is. Hoping this is making sense because it's fairly complicated. So what has happened was when we saw that 97.2 million, leadership needed to make some decisions about what was going to happen. And so basically they came up with 1.36 million in reductions. These are non-instructional reductions that they were able to find. And then we've been promised by the state from some support for the BHS relocation to the tune of 720,000 this year and for the next 2 more years. So a total of over 3 million from the state, we're pretty sure is going to offset our school budget here in Burlington. So the total, what has happened is the total from that 97.2 million has come down to 95.1, and that's where that number comes from for the 2022 budget, which again is an increase of 3.9%. It's a complicated story how we got there. And I don't think I need to go into those details. I might be able to answer some questions about it. But, the tax increase, tax increases are really beyond our control. And they have to do with common level of appraisement, dollar yield, per pupil weight ratings. And so we are proposing a BSD budget increase of 3.9%, but the state adds on to that as a way of thinking about it. The small increases that we're adding and the state bigger increase translates to a 6.88% increase in property taxpayers for this year. The income taxpayer rate is 6.47%. And the truth behind all this is all this information was compiled at the end of December, because we had to go to the city council, I think early January, to give them a number to put on the ballot. And since December, there's been some news regarding the dollar yield has changed, and due to a change in the common level of appraisement, which is favorable for the Burlington taxpayer. However, there was another mistake made regarding per pupil weighting, which it has to do with the money that we get from the state too. So they didn't really balance each other out. It looks as if Burlington will benefit from future, in the next couple of weeks, we'll learn that 6.88% increase may be lower than that. But that's where it is now, and that's what we have to plan for. I would just mention, Jeannie, I know you know about this too. The total reductions this year is 1.36 million that we cut out without losing any direct pupil services. These were positions and positions that were not filled. So no one is being fired from the district. Positions that were not filled are not being funded this year, and that's a significant savings. The minimal additions that we're adding are for the multilingual liaisons, which we desperately need, and it's and a strategic plan implementation to progress forward on the plans that we have as a district. And the totals of those two additions are only 220,000. So out of that 3.9% increase, only 220,000 is what we're spending in addition to what we've done in the past year. If that makes any sense.
And you know, you're an English teacher and I'm an art teacher. So the math, like what we're actually asking for percentage wise, I think maybe between the two of us, we figured it out was less than 2%. Out of a $95-something million budget, what the school board is sincerely adding to this budget is a blip on the radar.
Yeah.
And also is so overdue and so morally correct and everything about it. I want to answer questions and hope that you will see the value in supporting those additions, because that's really the only thing the district is asking. Everything else we have essentially had to, we've had to incorporate into our budget from the state.
Yeah, we've more or less level funded and made a very slight addition that we needed with the multilingual liaisons. And then there's been a lot cut. You know, when we first found out, we initially thought we were going to have a 13% increase because of all kinds of factors that were in play this year because of COVID and everything else. I mean, there's been so much going on in Burlington.
This totally freaked us out. In the beginning of this process, the state basically had us on high alert. Like, you're going to have to deal with the 13 point something increase no matter what you ask for. please be prudent. Yeah, and that tone has changed.
And we were prudent, and we still had over the last time we met in January, we were projecting a 7.15% increase for Burlington taxpayers. And we've since, took some other contingency money. Actually, we saved a lot due to COVID because of money that was not spent, like heating and bus transportation and all kinds of things that we didn't realize there was going to be that much of a savings. So we put that into reducing the number from 7.15 down to 6.88, which we felt was more reasonable for the taxpayers. And again, that could be lowered and most likely will be lowered a little bit more between now and voting day.
Cross your fingers.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that
and that would come from the state. That has nothing to do with the city. That would come from the state.
Yeah, I'm hoping the citizens of Burlington can support this. It's a very conservative budget, and people realize what's been going on with the high school and downtown and all that. So miraculously, we're at this point where we're looking forward to inhabiting the downtown site, and the construction of the high school is still, not solidified because we're still looking at testing data from the soil. But, things are moving along, believe it or not. And I don't know if you have any questions. I don't know if I can answer them or Jeannie can answer them about what we've said about the budget. We could talk about that, but I have other things I can talk about in terms of what has happened that's been really positive this year from my perspective. Do you have any questions?
I mean, I do have one question, but I want to open it up to the crowd. If anyone has a question for Jean or Stephen.
Brian had his hand up earlier. Brian Chena.
And Brian, do you have a question?
I don't have a question. I was just letting you know I had arrived.
Oh, cool. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Brian.
Hello. I will say that everyone should support the school budget, because when you don't support the school budget, it hurts the kids.
Yeah.
And make sure you tell your friends in the legislators, dear friends, to support the student weighted pupil study. Although I know it's going to the Senate at this point. So hobnob with them. Put in a good word.
Hopefully he does. So yeah, I have a question just about the budget. It pains me on a couple different levels to for the city, for the public to be paying those developers for that building on College Street or Cherry Street rather. But I understand you all did what you had to do. I'm not holding anything against you. But I think, I'm looking for like some kind of silver lining, which you alluded to, that there's progress being made on the high school. I haven't read anything about that yet. So like, I know this is probably borrowing from your future segment here, but like, what's been going on with that? What can you tell us?
Are you aware that there are local companies that are now involved in that development situation?
I am, but it's still, Cinex, right? He's still part of it.
He is. He is one part of it.
He's the managing partner.
He's still half, right? Essentially.
Yeah, he's half.
Yeah.
So in terms of downtown high school, the classes begin on the 3rd.
Awesome.
It's on 5th.
Well, on Thursday the 3rd, the first class is on Thursday the 5th. That's right. It's the 5th. Sorry. Because it's in service first. It's a hybrid model like other schools in the district. So it's not full day, full classes. The classes are still divided in half because of the social distance requirements. It's nothing different. It won't be different from what's happening in other high schools right now. It's not school that we know of, a school that we want. But it's at least the kids will be with their teachers in a new space. It's pretty exciting to be to see what it looks like. And you know, we just hired a new principal. We have Lauren McBride, who's been the interim principal, has now been hired as the principal until we find a replacement between now and next school year. And then we have hired an assistant principal. Her name is Gail Botello. She's been working in the district as the personal learning plan coordinator for the district, and I think an academic coach as well. And they've both been in these positions. So when Principal Green left in January, these two employees were able to fill in with pretty much, you know, making it a smooth transition for a very difficult process that we're undergoing. And these,
hey, just speaking of process, just for the record, they are both interim positions, principal and vice principal interim.
Yes. And so we opened up the search for the new principal just this week. And it turns out that this is actually a good time in the school year to look for administrators, because it's when administrators think about what they want to do, if they want to leave. So that people around the nation are looking maybe for other places. And of course, we all love Burlington, think it's a great place to be. So we're hoping that we get some excellent candidates from different parts of the country, wherever. So that's happening. You know, the Seahorse Pride boosters helped pack up the high school. I think it was over the weekend. They went into the classrooms, they put all the material that the teachers need, and they put them in boxes and they shipped them over to the new site. So that's in progress right now. And then actually, if you're interested in joining the Seahorse Pride group, which is the boosters support group, the next meeting is March 8th at 6. All of these are Zoom meetings. So the high school, I'm excited about the high school. I think it's a great place to be. We have, we just signed permission to rent the spaces, Janie, for the BTC downtown as well. And it's going to be.
There are 2 additional spaces that are really close to, we're not going to call it Macy's anymore. Guys, we call it BHS downtown. There are 2 spaces, industrial size, that hopefully we'll be able to house the Burlington Technical Center programs. So the idea of, it's not just this hub at Macy's, it's actually kind of a campus that is now developing downtown. Yeah, and we were pretty psyched that we could find a space for the high school downtown, but now to think that we're going to find additional spaces literally across the street, upstairs, down the thing. I'm feeling, I don't know what the word is. I think the word is.
Oh, Gene, I don't know about anybody else, but you're breaking up.
And I'm hoping the kids are.
Gene, you're breaking up for some reason.
Yeah. Gene, are you there? Your video is frozen as well. We can't hear you.
Oops.
Bye-bye.
And video's gone.
No. Okay, right.
no.
I want off my video. That makes it better. I'm totally gone.
Your voice is coming back.
Your voice is back. Yeah.
Okay, so sometimes when you turn off the video, you can get better bandwidth. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Crystal clear.
You can. Okay, so I'm just going to say, in essence, we're looking forward to having more of a campus vibe. These 2 others that become place ETC locate only within across the street down from BHS downtown. It's pretty much special, if you ask me. If that can happen, that'd be really great.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's great potential for the, and I said that before, I think last meeting, that with the kids downtown and becoming a more dynamic part of the city on a daily basis, I think it's going to really bring some life and excitement to the whole downtown scene. And even though we're socially restricted right now, wait until next year when things really start to roll down there. It's going to be, I think, exciting and wonderful. And again, we have a lease for 3 years, you know, and depending on what happens at BHS campus with the reconstruction, that space will, you know, it's possible that the high school will be back in its original location maybe next year or the year after, but we still have the downtown high school site to use. And the plan is, the silver lining more or less is that will be a Burlington School District site that can be used in other ways. For instance, when IAA, there's a capital plan to work on IAA, when that needs to be done, if we can move that whole school down there easily, the school will be up and functioning. It'll be an easier thing to do than to try to house them in different places around the city that's happened in the past. So in one way, it's going to be good for the district as a whole as we advance with some capital improvement plans that are in the works over the next couple of years. And I'll tell you that the city can be very proud of the work that went on this year, even though, you know, it's been an incredibly crazy year for everyone. I would remind people that phase 2 of the Edmonds complex was completed this year. If you haven't seen what Edmonds school looks like, it's amazing just to walk in there and see the beautiful new reformations that's happened in the entranceway, even the landscaping, the gym, the cafeteria, just the hallways and everything. It's beautiful, beautiful job. And then at Hunt, you people funded, the city of Burlington funded 2 new bleachers that were built in 1957. There's been kitchen plumbing and flooring and all that has been repaired at Hunt. The locker rooms are now ADA compliant at Hunt. At Smith, CP Smith, there's a new folding partition for the gym that allows for multiple use of that one space. At BHS, we have new bleachers in the gym that were built in 1964. Now we have new ones there. There was a parking lot pavement project that was completed. The re-envisioning bond, you can see in the information in the annual report about how that's changed. You know, the bond has changed in terms of what the final school will look like, and it's still, again, up in the air. But you can see the new plans, you know, based on the revisions that have had to be made. But we still have the 70 million ready to go with that. So that's good. Of course, the PCB testing and all that still drives the decision and the financial part of that project. What else? There are some things planned too. BHS re-envisioning, early ed pre-center, IAA building. There's this envelope that needs to be happening at IAA, and the HVAC, you know, the air quality at IAA and Edmonds, and has to be replenished, redesigned, what's the word I'm looking for, in the next couple of years. And then the Champlain School drop-off site. So all these things are still capital improvement plans that are still on the books. But I think we've accomplished a lot this year, even though most of our attention has been focused on the high school and the renting and the new superintendent and the new principal coming up. There have just been all kinds of crazy things, but we're moving right along at the helm with. And
Stephen,
yeah, Jeannie.
I did share a lot of what you just talked about is in the annual report.
Yes, it is.
I'd give Jess a link to that, and hopefully it will be in the notes.
Yeah, please look through it, especially read through that narrative. I think it's page 14 or something on the budget development. It gives you a grasp of the process. I don't know if there are any other questions. I mean, there are lots of questions that we all have.
Yeah, for sure. Barbara, you're muted.
I asked this question once before. Now it's more pressing. Before everybody is vaccinated, what are the testing protocols for students and staff and teachers coming downtown. Now they're not going to be isolated out on North Avenue. They're going to be in stores. There are seniors around. How are they going to be tested?
Well, Barbara, I'm going to point out that they have not been on North Avenue. They've been online. They've not matriculated.
No, in general, Jeannie, in general, that's where the high school was. It's not there anymore. So they're gonna be coming downtown, and downtown is a population center. And so what are the plans for testing teachers, students, and staff?
Right now, the testing that's going on with teachers is voluntary. I don't think it's actually legal to mandate anybody be tested. I mean,
you can mandate students be tested at the university. Why can't you mandate students, teachers, and staff be tested?
I mean, I actually feel like it might be harder to mandate minors over adults. But Barbara, I will look into that and get back to you.
I'm very concerned about it.
Yeah, we haven't talked specifically about that, Barbara, at a board meeting. I know that, in other schools, I sub at South Burlington, you walk in, your temperature is taken immediately. And there are forms that you fill out, like kids coming to our schools, the parents check in every morning electronically with a series of questions that they answer as a way to oversee or monitor any kind of symptoms. And I know at South Burlington, I think this is true in Burlington schools as well, anyone showing any symptoms is encouraged not to come at all.
They're encouraged not to come?
Yeah, they're not, if you have sniffles or any kind of cold, you stay home and you stay online for that day because classes are happening in two different ways.
More than encouragement, they have to be required not to come.
I think that's the implication. Yeah,
good.
Yeah. You have to be honest on the format. You can't have a sick child and send him to school anyway. But so far it's worked. I mean, we've had many cases, in Burlington, but I think only one has been transferred in the school. Everything else has come from outside, I think, at this point. I'm concerned about that too, especially with the older teachers who are perhaps more susceptible. And the vaccine is coming, but it's still a long way off. So I don't know really how to answer that question. It's very disconcerting to me as well.
Well, perhaps, look to the university and what they're doing and see if, what of it is transferable.
Yeah.
I know one thing, the district is working on having a dashboard that has pretty much a COVID dashboard, very similar to UVM, to inform the public. As in, you can go to the Burlington School District website and see whatever information at the time is relevant in the district.
I'm just saying it's a different story now that they'll be coming into an area where there are a lot of people shopping, eating, walking around.
Oh yeah, Barbara, they haven't actually been going to school. It's not even just like they're downtown. It's that they're actually going to go to school. Yeah.
But they're going to be.
Yeah, they will be.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm agreeing with you, Barbara.
Okay.
All right. So I think unless there's any other questions for Stephen or Jean, going once, going twice. I just saw it turn to 8:35, and I thought it'd be a good time to transition on, if that's okay with y'all.
Great.
Stephen, Jean.
Yeah, that's fine.
Cool. Thank you for being here, and thank you for fielding questions and doing what you do.
Thank you, Kevin.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Cheers. So moving on to our state reps and our city councilors for their updates. So for city councilors, just to take stock of who's here, we've got Brian Pine, and we've got, Perry was here earlier. yeah, so, and then we've got Brian Sheena, and also I got a video from Emma Mulvaney-Stanek, and I could play that. It's about 5 minutes, I think she said. But Brian, how about you go first, and then sorry, Brian Pine, and then Brian Sheena, and then maybe we can close out with Emma's video, if that sounds okay with you all. Cool. All right, Brian Pine, take it away.
Yeah, thank you. Kevin, I think I want to follow up on what we talked about earlier with the district energy system advancing to a really critical next phase. This has been really envisioned since McNeil was built in the 80s. So this has been a long time coming. And the final plan now is moved to the next level because of an organization called Evergreen, and that's a hyphenated name, Ever and Green, is a nonprofit entity that will be operating the system, and they will secure financing so the BED and the city don't have to actually incur any debt to make this happen. The host, or I should say the entity that will benefit from the district energy system, is the UVM Medical Center. And the plan is to continue to pursue additional institutions and buildings, but that knowing that the medical center is the biggest user is a critical first step. University of Vermont would be an ideal next institution to sign on, and that would really allow for a more full build out of the system. Vermont Gas is actually stepping in, which is pretty unusual for a fossil fuel based utility to step up. And they've essentially signed a purchase agreement for the full output of the system, including both the thermal energy and the renewable energy attributes that come from the property. So, I mean, from the system. So they basically get the renewable energy credits, which is a good thing because it allows Vermont Gas to, essentially diversify their portfolio and bring in another source of energy for a major customer. So that's a huge piece of progress that I think deserves to be highlighted. I want to just touch on what the council did on Monday regarding police, assuming people would like to hear about that. I'll be very brief. There was 3 parts to what the council did on Monday. Part 1 was to add, I'm going to get these terms, I have to say them myself, community support CSOs, community support officers. There we go. A community support officer handles sort of motor vehicle type issues, animal control, fairly basic issues. Councilor Freeman's here. They can probably help me explain this better. But the community support officers are unarmed officers that are housed within BPD. And this first step was to add 6 community support officers to assist the department, taking some of that burden off of the police force duties that they currently have delegated to them. So this would allow for, essentially non-uniformed officers to carry out these functions. We also added 3, this is another term I have to say first, community support, yes, community support liaisons. The terms are quite similar to each other, so I have to sometimes say them and write them out before I say them. That position, a community support liaison, is a more involved in sort of the human needs of our community in terms of folks experiencing substance use disorder, mental health crises, responding to those things that really require specialized training, but not law enforcement training. So those are 2 big accomplishments. The other one that the administration sought from the city council was approval to raise the cap on officers from 74 to 84. And that did not have support. That was not approved. And then there was a proposed compromise to raise it from 74 to 79, and that failed on a tie vote. So that issue is, at this point, is rather than move forward on changing staffing levels, the focus is we've got a process underway with a consultant that hopefully will start very soon And that consultant is expert at analyzing what are the needs of the community for public safety broadly, and what needs to be carried out by officers, armed officers, and what can be done by alternative providers. How can we create a system that is more kind of holistic, if you will, and not just, one size fits all. If you have a chainsaw, you can cut a branch off a tree, but you don't need a chainsaw to cut a 2x4. So really right sizing your response to what your problem is you're dealing with is the idea. And so that is where we're at. And Councilor Freeman could probably talk to, there's a process that is community engagement process, and there's some meetings coming up fairly soon that will be a community engagement around redefining and revisioning what we expect and what we think Burlington needs for public safety. So I'm gonna pass it off since it's getting late and Councilor Freeman's with us. So
I'm back. Yeah, sorry, I had to jump into another meeting. Is my audio working okay? I thought it was echoing for a second. Yeah, so we have contracted with Talitha, and those some of those community engagement forums will be coming up in the next few weeks. And we are also, this is in the joint committee that we have been doing that work. And then we're also contracting with another consultant, as Brian just discussed, about the sort of more audit of the department. And that my understanding is that we might start to see some initial results from that in April. And, sort of further out from that. Yeah, that's my only update on that so far. Talitha's come to the joint committee on a few, I think twice now. And so far it's been, from my, impression, very positive. So I'm looking forward to how that engagement project works and further for the audit. So, and I don't know if we're doing Q&A right now or if people want to ask questions specifically, I'm happy to also just keep that open since I missed some of what was already discussed, and that's about it for the update.
Cool, thank you, Perry. I think just for like the Q&A, I think just, both city councilors and state reps, would give their updates and then just do Q&A and all in one batch. That's cool with everybody. Just so, everyone gets their time and we can fit it all in. So Brian, take it away.
I appreciate that, because I've been on Zoom since 7:30 this morning with barely any breaks, and I would just like to give my update and then shut the camera and relax unless I'm called upon. So thank you. Yeah. So since I'm the only state rep, I'll just take the remaining 16 minutes. Just kidding. So I find that a little bit of humor in the Zoom world goes a long way these days. So I'm going to get serious now, though. So I'm going to start out with a question. What is public safety? What is public safety? Too often, public safety is shorthand for the policing and criminalization of human behavior. Yet these approaches have failed to keep the public safe. And these approaches have neglected to address the real reasons for people's behavior. And in many situations, our approaches to public safety have only intensified stigma, pain, suffering, disparities, and the inequities of our society. So what would really keep the public safe? The Progressive Caucus of the Vermont House envisions public safety as a framework of transformative intersectional policies that build equity and fairness into all of our institutions, that would guarantee access to healthcare, housing, and economic opportunity, and that would redirect our justice system away from crime, punishment, and trauma towards accountability, healing, and restoration of the social fabric. The public health emergency of the COVID-19 pandemic has intensified the public health emergency of racism. We must take swift action to create equity in healthcare and to reimagine public safety by building an emergency response system that sends people the right assistance in their moment of need, whether that be mental health and substance abuse services, universal housing options, economic resources, all of these things should be delivered as part of a continuum of universal health care, and we want to start with universal primary care. We don't need to police each other more. We need to take care of each other better. This week in the House Healthcare Committee, we took up Bill H210, an act relating to addressing disparities and promoting equity in the healthcare system. Like I said earlier, the public health emergency of the COVID-19 pandemic over the past year has amplified the inequities of our healthcare system that are associated with the public health emergency of racism, which has gone on for 400 years in this country or on this continent. Although the ethic of medicine traditionally stated primum non nocere, to first do no harm, the healthcare system has created harm and has reinforced the suffering that many people have faced in our society who are Black, Indigenous, or other people of color, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, questioning, or queer, people with disabilities. For hundreds of years, many of us have had to learn how to take care of each other ourselves, and when the system has failed us. So in the context of this pandemic, we've taken a long, hard look at the inequities and disparities that exist, and we ask ourselves, how can we make the system better? The Wellness Committee of the Racial Justice Alliance has presented this bill, H210, that the Healthcare Committee is now working on. And in this bill, we are seeking to establish an Office of Health Equity, establish the Health Equity Advisory Commission, issue grants for the promotion of health equity, collect data better so that we can understand better the health disparities in Vermont, and require additional education on cultural competence and anti-racism in healthcare field. So that's just, my update this week was focused on healthcare. I am on the healthcare committee, and we are in a public health emergency of not only COVID-19, but also racism. And I'll just end with an announcement that next Tuesday night from 7 to 8 p.m., I'll be working with Decriminalize Nature to do a national webinar where we're going to be talking about efforts to decriminalize medicines, plant and fungal medicines that are used for spiritual, medicinal, or entheogenic purposes. So if people are interested in that topic about the decriminalization of nature and the decriminalization of people having access to traditional plant and fungal medicines, feel free to join us for that webinar, and I'll post some information in the chat. And I'll stop there so that there's time for questions or if any other reps showed up. So thank you for giving me a few minutes to share my update tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brian. There unfortunately is not a chat tonight, but if you maybe send it to any of us on the steering committee, we can put it on the website. We can send it along to Cito. We can get that out there.
That sounds good. You could also let me share my screen and trust that I'm going to show you. After I saw that other NPA meeting and I was scandalized, but I'll send you the slides if you want to send slides out to people that have information about the webinar. So
send me the slides to share my screen, or I'm not sure what you want me to do.
I was joking about sharing the screen. You could let me share my screen and I would legitimately show you the like rated G slide about the webinar. I was just joking because I said it and then I was thinking you probably don't make that as easy anymore after what happened in the Ward 47 NPA. It really went down quickly.
But we know it's you, so it's fine, and it's all more controlled. Liam, are you able to hook that up, or can I do it? Can I do it?
Your screen, as of right now.
I'm a little embarrassed sharing the slide because it has my picture on it, but I'm going to do it anyway. So, it's letting me do it.
Do it.
So that's the slide. So you can see on there, we've got like the Zoom info down here if anyone wants to take a screenshot, and we will have strict security, so don't try to pull any fast ones. But there's our slide. Hopefully that was long enough for people to see it. I'm going to take it down now. So feel free to join us if you want to talk. I think the specific medicines we're looking at decriminalizing are peyote and mescaline-containing cacti, psilocybin and psilocin mushrooms, ayahuasca, DMT-containing plants, and ibogaine. So those are the plants that we're looking at, asking that they be decriminalized as part of this national movement to decriminalize nature and allow people to have access to these medicines that are our birthright as humans. So anyway, thank you.
Right on. Thank you, Brian. Yeah, anybody have any questions for Brian, Perry, or Brian? Going once, going twice?
Quickly, Brian, is Latin your first language? Because that was really a good do no harm. Although to Latin, I think you did some harm. So we're only able to see a little bit of public feedback that went to city councilors about the multiple police resolutions and policing resolutions that you guys voted on. Could you give us a better sense of what the community, what you were seeing for and against? I don't know if you keep track or if that's appropriate.
Councilor Freeman, why don't you want to take a shot at what you're hearing and seeing?
Sorry, I thought that, Patrick, you said Brian, but it's also because I have something on the stove that's like exploding. So I'm just going to go turn off my stove really quick.
Okay.
Yes, I will answer the question.
Yeah.
To both of you. Yeah.
Real quick. I think it's pretty clear that the narrative that was created that says if we don't do exactly what the chief and the mayor requested, we're putting the city, the residents of Burlington at risk, was a very powerful, persuasive narrative that was accepted as not just a supposition and an assertion, but as fact. And I don't think the evidence and the data support it, but it took on a life of its own. And I would say in the Ward 3, I heard from very few Ward 3 folks urging that we increase the cap. But I did hear from people in other, primarily in the South End, who saw a Front Porch Forum post that urged people to contact all the city councilors. That was a very, shall we say, it was a catalytic Front Porch Forum post. It resulted in dozens of people from the South End, Wards 5 and 6, contacting us about this subject. But it didn't spread beyond the Front Porch Forum post neighborhoods that were hit by that post. And I never actually got to read it. I have plenty of things to read. I don't get to read other councilors' posts that often, and I don't really need to. But I know the gist of what it said because I asked someone, what inspired you to get involved right now? I'm just curious what got you going. And she said, oh, here's what got me going, and sent me Councilor Shannon's post. And so that's what inspired a lot of people to get pretty concerned. Essentially what it said is, if the council doesn't do this, we will have much less safety and we'll have a part-time police force. And neither of those are assertions, those are suppositions, those are sort of unfounded claims, but they became sort of, I hate to say it, but Noam Chomsky calls it manufacturing consent. That's what they were manufacturing consent, exactly what they were doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that's similar to what I've seen, especially considering that some of the forums this summer about reducing the size of the cap, had between, maybe 700 to 1,000 people contacting us in support of that. I have not seen, I just haven't seen anywhere near that volume in terms of supporting raising it. And, but there were like those few dozen emails that were, I think, from some folks, and primarily actually not in Wards 2 and 3, although there were a few. This is something I've really wondered about because I hate feeling, and this might also be somewhat the product of COVID and feeling more isolated. I hate feeling like I'm in an echo chamber as someone who wants to represent really the entire district and hear all those voices. And so I just wonder how to hear that feedback, because obviously there are like broad, sort of oppose or against, like support, maybe voices, but there's also just so much nuance that's been coming up in these decisions. And so I'm really trying to figure out how to hear more feedback about the nuance of the decisions that we're making. So yeah, that's something that I've been wondering about as well. One of the things I have heard, I'll just say really quickly, that does feedback, that an opinion that's bothered me a bit is there have been some comments around specifically around domestic violence and around the actions that the council has been taking being somehow increasing domestic violence or lacking support for folks who are experiencing domestic violence, and also in a way I think pitting racial justice issues against women's issues in a way that also really doesn't understand the intersectionalism of also women of color who experience both, which I think is really problematic. So that's just something I've been thinking a lot about lately. That's been something that I've heard in terms of opposition, like if you make these changes, women will no longer be safe in the city. They won't be able to walk through the neighborhoods at night, and that's something I'd like to be able to have more conversation about, because I don't think that's the right response around how to actually keep people safe in terms of intimate partner violence and domestic violence or violence against women. So, but yeah, thanks for the question.
All right. Yeah, if nobody has any questions for Brian Perry or Brian, I have a video from Emma, another state representative. I can play, and then I think we can call it a wrap. All right, I'll share my screen and play that, and then go from there. There we go. Share. Right.
You're muted. You're muted.
Ah. Damn it.
It's not a Zoom meeting if someone's muted when they're not meant to be.
I can lip read translation if you wish. It might not be accurate.
Did everyone see the video of the cat, the Zoom?
Yes. I'm a human, guys. I'm a human, people. I'm a human, just so you know.
That's what you said when you were yelling, oh, they're on mute.
I'm not a human.
Are they a cat?
I'm not a human. Sorry.
All right. So, all right. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
We heard you. We couldn't hear Emma.
Okay. That's weird.
It might be
an interpretive dance video and not a speech.
It might be because of the headphones, Kevin. You might have to take off your headphones and just play it through the speakers.
All right.
A little bit of an update on my work in the state legislature.
Can you all hear that?
Yep.
Okay. Cool.
So let's get right to it, because I know there's a big long agenda tonight, and maybe you're watching later on. So I introduced my first two bills in the last couple of weeks. The first one being H-163, in case you want to look it up on the Vermont Legislative website. It's an act relating to enhancing equitable learning and workplace environments in public schools in Vermont. And the purpose is to really require and fund state, partial funding, like 50-50 match from state to local, anti-bias professional development training for every single person in the school, meaning all educators, all staff, and all school board members, so that we have high quality anti-bias training, anti-bias professional development, I should say, because it's more than training, for folks that meet school districts where they're at and really moves the conversation around equity everywhere in the state, because not every school district is working on equity in the same way. My second bill is a labor bill, numbered H-239. It was just introduced today, actually. And this is an omnibus bill, which means sort of like a catch-all for a few different worker protection concepts. There's three things in here to help stabilize jobs for workers. It first requires employers to provide reliable schedules for employees. This would be a great benefit to folks who work in the hospitality and restaurant industry, as well as retail, who often get work schedules days, a day, or hours even before they're to begin, and it creates great instability and ability to find childcare that's reliable, as well as work other jobs and just really live lives that are not tethered to what their work schedule might be. The second thing in this workers bill is granting workers just cause termination rights, which means that workers, if they were to get fired, would have to be they would have due process and ability to have not be fired for any particular reason, but to have a defined reason why they were being terminated, so they had sort of rights in the workplace and better protections around termination. And the last piece would be requiring employers. I actually came from a constituent here in Chittenden 6-2 a few weeks ago, but would require employers to reimburse workers for certain home office expenses if they're working remotely. There's actually 6 states that already require this, including our neighbor New Hampshire. And so this would be an important adaptation of our labor laws as we look to continue to live through this pandemic and after the pandemic, when there might still be remote workers out there. Just a couple other things to just highlight for tonight, and that would be that the House Commerce and Economic Development Committee, for which I'm a member of, is starting to dive into the budget around allocations for money around economic development, workforce development, looking at issues that or programs that VSAC funds, for example, looking at community development efforts that comes to the Agency of Community and Economic Development. And so I'm really always trying to bring an eye towards equity and really trying to center folks who had trouble accessing resources so far through the pandemic, who own small businesses, who might have started a business, who might have businesses that don't have formal, financial departments to it to help them advocate and access grants and loan programs that have already been offered through the federal and state government. So I'm bringing that eye there, and in particular, if you're a small business owner, if you know folks, especially women and BIPOC-owned businesses that had trouble with the first rounds of pandemic-related grants or loans, please put them in touch with me, because we'd love to incorporate that perspective into testimony and decisions around future grants that the state might put forward to help businesses recover, and most importantly, by extension, help workers recover and weather this pandemic. And then the last thing I just want to end on is this very big issue of unemployment data breach that some folks in Chittenden 6-2 have unfortunately experienced, where the Department of Labor sent out incorrect 1099-G tax forms. It is something that impacted only Vermonters who used 2 of the pandemic-related unemployment programs, the Lost Wages Assistance Program and the Short-Term Supplemental Program. The Department of Labor is getting better, but they're still needing to improve a lot of their communication with folks. I know this, and hearing from all of you, to make sure Vermonters have what they need to understand what you need to do and what the state's doing to remedy this problem. So there's now a fairly decent FAQ site up on their webpage. I've been told they're working to translate it. I keep pushing them to make sure that they're communicating more frequently with impacted Vermonters and making sure that language is accessible to everyone and not just rely on email to push out information to folks, because this is way too important to send an email about what people need to do. But the most important thing, if you're one of the folks who were impacted by this data breach, is to know that the state will now offer you free credit monitoring services for a year. Again, free to you, but you also should take steps to freeze your credit and look into the steps that are required to kind of monitor your identity so that there isn't identity theft out there. So I'm going to leave you just with one resource to call if that's all strange to you or you've never done it before, because the Attorney General's Office, the State Attorney General's Office, through the Consumer Protection Program, CAP, can help you through all of that. And they are also a free service to every Vermonter. So you can call them at 800-649-2424 or email them at ago.cap@vermont.gov. They also have a website which you can Google, but again, you can email them at ago.cap@vermont.gov or call them at 1-800-649-2424. So do be in touch if you have any questions, feedback, ideas. I'm always open, and I'm really trying to prioritize constituent emails over anything else in my legislative work. So you can reach me at emulvaney-stanek@leg.state.vt.us or give me a call at 802-448-0838. So thanks, neighbors. I hope you had a great NPA meeting. Sorry to miss you, and take good care. Thank you.
All right. So with that, I think we can call it a wrap. Thank you everyone for being here. And
I have a question for Emma. I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
Ryan.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Liam.